Hello and welcome back to the studio. This week we're going to master this painting, Wilderness Way, a Bob Ross classic from series 31. Of course we'll be using lots of Bob's techniques and I'll add a few of my own little touches in as well. We'll start off with a lovely acrylic underpainting, followed by a beautiful sky, lots of layers of colour here. Moving on to some trees, bushes and a lovely path, and of course a thrilling finale. We'll add that pop of light to our paintings. So, no time to waste. Get those brushes and let's get painting. So here's my canvas, 16 by 20, set up as landscape, that means lengthways. And this is an exciting painting, Wilderness Way. Of all the years I've been painting Bob Ross paintings, I don't think I've ever seen this painting. It's been lurking in this book. And this is book 31, number 13. So this is what I'm going to have a go at today. So a new experience for both of us. I've never painted before and let's see how I get on. The other fun thing to do is to mix some acrylics together to make grey. I know I've got a grey background, but here I'm going to be using black and white to make some various shades of grey and obviously to use some black on its own. This is an underpainting that we're going to be doing and I'm going to use a little foam brush for that and a piece of natural sponge. So here's my little plastic plate, a little drop of white and some black gesso. It's trying to escape. And as you can see, I've dropped in a couple of pins here. This is my horizon line. So I'm going to take just a small amount of this black and let's just quickly drop that in so we know where that is. Now this is all going to be black under here, but I do want to do something in the background here. There's a little distant mountain over here in the background and we've got some trees and bushes to drop in as well. And I can try and keep this on my plate, that would be good, wouldn't it? A little black and some white. I'll make a nice grey gesso. Now I'm painting on a grey canvas because I like a nice neutral canvas to work on. I don't like painting on white canvases, they're just too glaring, the light just bounces back. So I always tone my canvases down with a mid-grey or a dove grey colour. This is kind of a neutral colour, so that lightest lights and darkest darks really show up on here. You find that's a big advantage. Now, remember the rule of thirds. We want something to be roughly a third the way across the canvas. And that's roughly where I'm going to position my little mountain in the distance here. And I'm just going to make a rough sort of position. There we go. I've just got, say, black and white acrylic mixed on my little foam brush here. And I think there could be a nice little range of hills going away in the background here. So this is darker than the background, but not as dark as the foreground is going to be. And I will just push a little bit more colour into there. And if I cover any of this up or if I lose any of this, oh well, that's okay. We had fun painting it all the same. So it's about a third. And let that paint just fade away through to there. We're going to have a big bunch of trees over on this side as well. Now I'm going to let that just sit and dry for a minute because I'm going to put a few little highlights on here. I'm going to have some rising sunlight just about here. Again, directly on that third mark. So the edge of here will probably get a little burnt away. A bit more black. But still to the grey side. Still to the grey side. I'm just going to drop in some little trees. Collection of foliage on the end here, just to kind of stop your eyes wandering away. And we can do more with this if we need to, but as I say, it's just background, just background. In here, it's all going to be dark, so I'm going to just use straight black, straight black. Over on this side of my painting, there's a couple of nice big trees in Bob's painting. I might just simplify that and just have sort of one, and then I'm going to put some nice silver birches here. So I think I'm going to vary this a little bit. You know me, if I can make a little change, I will. So I've got a piece of car sponge here, just synthetic car sponge, nothing expensive. You can buy those for kind of $1 or £1 or £2 from a store, and I just cut them into cubes. And I give them a little bit of a bashing with a pair of scissors and just kind of snip little bits out of them to make them sort of appear like the surface of the moon. So there's a nice tree here. So if I touch with that piece of sponge, you see it kind of creates this lovely broken effect. And I just revolve and turn it with my fingers a little bit so I'm not making patterns and shapes. I'm just going to tap that on lightly, kind of get a position first. So I think that's about right. I'm going to let this kind of go across to there a little bit. And I'm going to get squeezing my silver birches here. That'll be kind of about there. Again, I'm just measuring this by eye. And this is something which, as an artist, you should get used to doing. So you kind of take a step away from your painting and you kind of look at it from maybe a few feet back, and which is what I'm doing right now. I sort of standing away from my canvas. I kind of get a good few feet back, and I try and visualize in my mind's eye the big trees coming through here. This is really what I call a filler tree, like a background tree. I think it needs to be a little wider. Maybe we'll create a little something here. See, Bob had two big full-size trees here. I'm a little tight of space. I don't have an 1824 canvas. I've only got a 1620 canvas, so I don't have quite the real estate. I think that's going to work really well. Now, I'm kind of happy with that. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to come back with a little more paint and just beef up the center. I think there's going to be a few branches on here, so I'm going to use more of the edge of my piece of sponge and maybe just sort of tap and get these little kind of umbrella shapes hanging in. There we go. Kind of just think about trees as a series of little umbrellas. Because I'm going to have a little roadway through here. And I need this to have some lovely texture. I'm going to go for a very pale grey colour here, very pale. And I'm going to just sort of touch here and kind of indicate that there may be some light coming through. This is really just light and darks of a hillside. I think there's going to be some nice light coming through in here, kind of spilling over the edge of the hill. Again, use your imagination, try and sort of see how you think the light would come over the edge and would play across into the sort of midground. There we go. And from experience, I know that as this dries, this is going to lose a little bit of its intensity. They tend to sort of dry a little darker. Let's put a little bit of something over in here too. And don't worry about these trees. If you mess any of them up, we can always put them back on again. They're really only just what I call, they're just holding position for me. But if I like what I'm doing, I may just leave it. You know, that's the beauty. Bob always used to say, you know, it's your world. You paint what makes you happy. And that is so true. If you can just kind of get a little happiness from what you're painting, it is wonderful. There we go. So a little heavier on. I'm putting a little bit more paint in here. I want this to dry a little brighter. And not totally black here, folks, because we want this to look distant, so we don't really want really strong black colours. I keep the black colours for down here in the foreground. So, but I'm going to go really quite nice and charcoal here. I want to really make like a deeper shadow in there. And a few little shadows in here too. Wow, look at that. Doesn't that look real? Put a little more shadow in there too. And it doesn't take much, does it? Suddenly we're looking at a whole background scene. Just a little bit of light and dark. Isn't that crazy? It always makes me smile when I do something like this, and to be honest, it's ridiculously simple sometimes, and you do something you think, well, that's going to really kind of take a lot of effort, and then you do it and you think, well, I don't know. Could it be easy? Could it really be that easy just to create something like that? Well, there you go. You saw me doing this in real time. And I'm going to try not to edit out too much of this so that you get to see how a painting can come together really so quickly. I got a little bit of this grey colour on my foam brush, and I might just drop in a little bit of something in here as well. Again, it's just filler. It's kind of nothing special here, it's just background stuff. Lights and darks, that's all it is. I've pretty much got a finished painting. We'll just call it done, and this is going to be one of the shortest videos on my channel. But you wouldn't be happy with that, so I'm going to do a little bit more. Okay, let's leave this to sit and dry, and I'm going to come back here in about half an hour or so. So my canvas is nice and dry. It's ready to start the oil painting phase of this scene. And for this, I'm going to start off by using something called Bob Ross Liquid Clear Oil Paint. This is a thin coating I'm going to apply to my painting, which means I can apply one wet coat of oil paint straight on top of another. This is called a wet on wet technique. If you don't have any liquid clear though from the Bob Ross company, you can substitute. On my previous painting, I used this, some refined linseed oil. It's a little more runny and it needs to be applied very, very sparingly. They both do. But with this one, if you put on just a bit too much, just pick up a paper towel and wipe off the excess. And this tends to dry a little quicker. So especially on a day like today, which is very warm, you want to apply this maybe sort of a little sparingly to maybe just one section, like the sky, complete that, and then apply a little bit more to the foreground. Today, I'm going to do the whole canvas. As on previous paintings, I use an old Bob Ross landscape brush, and I've put a little bit of the Bob Ross liquid clear into a dish. You can just see it, it's like runny honey. I'm going to take a small amount on this old brush and just dab it around. You just want to scrub that into the surface, so make sure you've got a good grip on your canvas. And this isn't terribly exciting because it's liquid clear, you can't see anything. But I'll show you in a minute a nice easy test using the light on my mobile phone. I dimmed the lights in the studio and I've got my mobile phone and I've turned its little torch on. I hope you can see there. It's nice and shiny, and as I come down you see it becomes matte. So this is dry and that bit's wet. And if I run my finger over this, it feels just slightly oily. And that's what you want to feel, just a little bit of oiliness. If it feels really wet, and when you do that it leaves a trail, then you know you've applied a little bit too much. So I just have to finish off this corner, but this is particularly useful if you're checking areas like the sky where it's very difficult to see how much you've applied. Over the black, it shows up a little easier. And in fact, you can see that on the edge there, well, it's just a little bit too wet. I'll push that down and fill in the corner with it. There, my canvas is now ready for some colour. Here's the palette I'm starting this painting with. Titanium white, phthalo blue, alizarin crimson, Indian yellow, ochre and some red. And the first thing I want to do is mix up a nice lavender colour for the background of my sky. As you can see, my alizarin crimson's trying to go off the palette as usual. So I'll take that and a little bit of phthalo blue, not much. About 1 part phthalo blue to about 5 parts crimson. I want to mix this up and get a nice lavender colour. It's a bit of a classic yellow, reddy orange and purple sky. Bob often use this colour combination, it works really well, and I'm going to be doing the same. There's my nice purple colour, and I also want to mix up a nice orange colour, which is a little bit of red and some Indian yellow. Wow, really lovely and hot. Put some more Indian yellow colour out my palette as well. I'm going to carry on using this old 1-inch brush to apply my colour, but it had a lot of liquid clear on it, so I want to just dry clean that first. We don't want to add any more liquid clear to our painting. I think this is a mistake some people make. They just use the same brush and go straight into the paint when that's actually full of liquid clear. Now it's dry, I can go into my colours and I won't be adding any more liquid clear to it. My first colour is going to be a little touch of Indian yellow. This is a transparent yellow colour. I want this for my horizon line here, just behind this little mountain. Now, when this colour hits the white, it produces a lovely bright glow. When it goes over the blacks and greys though, it goes sort of strange sort of green colour. Now, I don't mind too much this going green, but I don't really want my mountain to have that sort of funny green hue to it. So I might actually use a cotton bud to take some of it off. We'll see how we get on. Because this is a wet canvas, because we put the oil on there, it means that you can actually use your brush and you can actually just rub paint out. You can just sort of squeeze it up out of the way. Now, is it yellow enough? Do you want it richer than that? Because it looks a little bit sort of lemon to me, and I prefer a little stronger, warmer colour. I'd rather add a little more than be short. Now, don't forget, we're going to be putting a brilliant patch of white in the sky here for the sun just rising up behind this mountain. So maybe I just want to scrub some of that paint away from there to sort of make it easier for that colour to stick. See how I just lightened up that area? Now, there we go. So I don't think I want to put any more Indian yellow on my canvas. That's actually much, much brighter in real life. And on camera it looks a little different. So this is about as much Indian yellow as I think I want to put onto my painting. Now, in Bob's painting, he put ochre on next, but I actually want to use orange. I like this warm orangey colour for my paintings, made up of Indian yellow and bright red. Look at that. It just adds a little bit of heat to my painting. Knock off all that surplus paint, because now I want to actually go into a little touch of bright red, just a little touch. Again, just adds a little more interest, a bit more colour. I quite like that little patch of bright red over there. I think I'm going to leave it in my sky. Now, this brush has got yellow on it and it's got red on it, and it's a bit risky. If I use that to put the lavender on with blue in it, there's a good chance I'm going to end up with a bit of a pickle. So from experience, I'm going to use another brush. Fortunately, I have lots of them, and these are my old worn out brushes I keep for doing this sort of work, just applying colour. And I'm going to go into my lavender colour. Wow, isn't that a pretty colour? Lavender, alizarin crimson, phthalo blue. And you saw how little I was putting on my brush there. I just want a little tiny touch of this because, again, from experience, I know that if this colour hits this nice reddish colour here, and there's any amount of yellow in it, it's going to go sort of a strange sort of purpley colour. Maybe almost looks a bit like tobacco brown colour first of all, and then what happens is it slowly goes into sort of a strange looking green. So I'm going to literally apply that just to that very top edge, and I don't really care if it looks like a line just yet. I just want to get a little bit of paint on my canvas without risking it going bright green. So I think I'm fairly okay. I don't know if we get strange colours here because it's right behind a tree, but over there I don't want a really weird colour. And I'm going to just do a very gentle blend here. And if I see any weird colours here, I'm going to stop, dry clean my brush and play somewhere else. Yeah, a little touch more. You decide how much of this you want to blend. I'm going to just spend maybe a few minutes painting and taking away and rubbing and blending and keep working over this again until I get it exactly how I want. It'll take me a few minutes and I'll do a little bit of time lapse. So here's my painting after a little bit of blending, lots of dry cleaning of this brush because it was picking up lots of the oranges and the purple colours here. And I darkened down my sky a little bit more. I added more of the orange colour to it. I just wanted to see that little brightness above the mountain tops here, but I think it was just a bit too much of the Indian yellow. I got a bit carried away with it. And I added more of the lavender colour here to make a nice purple colour. See, it kind of creates that sort of tobacco colour. So I'm okay with it, but just remember when you put these colours together, they can get some odd combinations. But again, I just wanted to have this to be more like a sunrise, and it just looked a bit too bright. Now, I'm going to save putting in my bit of brightness in the sky till a little bit later on. I think it's time I started working on this area of my painting. Maybe put a little bit of colour into these trees. In Bob's original painting, he underpainted all of the foliage and the foreground with the lavender colour. And it's something I've done in the past on a similar sort of painting, and it didn't work out very well for me. As I say, I've never done this painting before, but I do know about this, and I tend to like to turn my lavender into more of a dark green colour. So I put out a nice amount of black and a good amount of sap green. I'm going to turn my lavender to a dark foresty green colour. And there we are, a proper green colour for my painting. Now, let's get that old brush back, because I want to add some of this nice sap green colour all over my painting. And it doesn't matter, there's a little bit of the sky colour on here. This colour is nice and dark. And I'm just going to fill in this area. I'm going to leave some of these trees as background. I just want to drop some of this colour in here. Now, you won't see very much of this because I'm painting over this very, very dark background colour here. But trust me, there's a nice green tint coming through. And I'll also be putting some up here in my painting. And when you come out to the ends of these branches, you'll notice that I'll just be using the brush at a slight angle. So tap your brush, and let your brush sort of leave a little bit of an imprint. Yeah, so you get these nice sort of patterns here. And if I miss a bit, then the black gesso does a great job of catching it. And I'll carry on adding this colour to my painting, and I'll be adding it all down in here as well. Then we'll come back and we'll add in some more distinctive looking trees. To highlight my little trees and bushes, I'm going to use my nice brush. As you see, I've started pulling together some cad yellow, a little touch of Indian yellow with a touch of sap green, and I'm going to use just the very top corner of this brush. So I'm just going to press and open that brush up, just get a little paint. And this is why you need a nice new brush for this, because you want the bristles to really open up really nicely. Now remember, the light's coming through here, so maybe there's a little bush here that I've done. Maybe you'll just do that right hand side first. And because this dark paint is thick and sticky, it'll grab this little bit of colour from the brush. But what happens after just a few seconds, I start to run out of colour. I can't get any more to stick, but I can always turn it around onto the other corner and see if we can get some of that to stick. There. But you can't go too far with it, because obviously what happens is you start picking up the dark colour. Before I reload my brush, top tip, give it a little flick on a little piece of tissue paper, just a little light flick, so that when you reload, your colour stays nice and bright. And again, just reload a corner, a little bit of colour, give it a little press and see if you can get that nice stippled effect. And see if you can paint another little bush or another little tree, and do them sort of one at a time. Maybe you want to see some more over on the other side. There may be some other little bushes in here that you want to pick out. Now remember, this is going to be a sunrise, so none of these want to be that bright. They all want to be fairly subdued. Give it a little push. Maybe I want to just do a little bit of highlight at the very, very top against that sky. And here you see I've just tipped my brush slightly more on an angle. And I'll just be doing more individual sort of branches for this little part of my painting. Once again, as you come down, you're going to go down into the shadowy areas of your painting. So let the paint just run out. Once you've got those little trees in place, you can turn your brush on its side. And instead of just tapping, you want to just push into the paint and drive the paint just ahead of the bristles. See how that kind of just pushes up? So what we have is the brush is nicely opened, and you see a line of bright paint across that very top edge there. And think about now about putting in some land. Leave a little shadow, think about the light coming through from the back, and you just want to tap just gently here. Tap. See, it leaves that lovely bright line of paint. And start thinking about developing this as a nice sort of field of colour. If you want to make it a little brighter. What I did then is I just took a little touch of white into my colour. Just a touch. Doesn't take much, just a little bit. And see what it does to my colours. It really makes them change. See how bold that looks now. And keep working backwards and forwards. Leave a little dark in here as well. And say brightest in here, getting a little darker to the sides. There we go, just working forwards. I'm going to save it for here because I have this pathway coming through here a little bit later on in my painting. No, it's okay folks, I haven't taken leave of my senses. It's just that I realised that trying to paint dark on dark isn't terribly entertaining for you. So I thought, well, if I just extend the green out a little more and just use it what's on my brush, then you might get a little peek at what I'm going to do here, which is I'm going to paint some bushes under my trees. Now, how far down does the tree want to grow? Well, if I finish it there, it looks like a huge tree that's set back on the same level as these bushes here. So I want this to actually grow down into this area a little bit more. So I just have to keep that in mind when I'm actually applying the dark paint again, that this tree is actually going to come right down into here. And here's where you see I'm just applying a little bit of colour there, not a lot of colour, just so that you can see what I'm doing here. Otherwise it's not terribly entertaining, is it? Painting dark on dark. It's like chasing a black pudding in a coal cellar without a torch. Only people from England would know what a black pudding is, I think. Down here in the corner of my canvas, I want some nice bushes. And I'm going to use my old brush to paint them. An underpainting. Now, I know I just turned all the exposure up so you can actually see something, so excuse the glare, but look at my old 1-inch brush. And particularly look at the shape of it. It's got a really kind of worn out corner to it. And this side is rounded. It's because I continuously load my brush by pulling it one way through the paint and bending the bristles back. Now, I've demonstrated this before, but I want you to see it again. Look at all that lovely texture. Firm, sticky, dry paint. And I press my brush to bend the bristles back. And that creates this nice worn out corner. And that side is always going to go to the top. Now I'm going to paint a little bush in here. I'm going to paint up one little bush just to show you what's going to happen here. My hand back out the way. Think about this like a little clock face. Touch and you press. And you kind of create this lovely, looks like, I call them turkey bush. It looks like a turkey's tail. See, just kind of series of pushes that go out from the center. So you see I created this kind of nice little bush shape in here. And it's very textured. And the idea is that when I come to put highlights on it, like I did with these ones back here, the paint is really nice and pimply and rough. You actually want to texture this whole area. And although you can't see it very easily, I'm actually going to paint a series of little bushes here. And I'm going to leave a little section here for a roadway in my painting. About there, I think, yeah. Let's come down a little bit lower on this end. Maybe I should sketch the path in. That would help you, wouldn't it? To help you see where my path is going to be, I've just got a filbert brush, a little bit of grubby white paint on it. And if I just do some little dipping strokes here, just to kind of indicate where the pathway is going to come into my painting here on the corner. Maybe it's going to go off into the distance. I think it sort of goes off into the distance and down a little dip. So there we go. My pathway is going to come round, and turn, and then head off into the distance. And Bob had his one just stopping at the edge of the grass. I don't know. Maybe I'll take mine off into the distance. I don't know. We'll see. I'll make my mind up as I go along. My tree needs a nice trunk, but I don't want to see the whole trunk. I just want to see little bits of it. And I'm going to take a little bit of grubby white paint, a little bit there, sort of grubby white, a little bit of dark sienna, a little bit of Van Dyke brown, and I'm going to just make my regular sort of marble mix colour. My trunk, so bright enough to actually see, but I don't really want this to jump off the canvas too much. So I've got a little mix of that marble colour, and just through here, right through the centre of my tree. And I'm going to just take my knife and just give it a little sort of sideways pull. Let's say I don't want this to be too bright. It looks a little bright. Just take down the colour a little tiny bit. This is what I call a stop-start tree. So in other words, you see a bit of trunk, then you see some foliage. So maybe I can just sort of sneak a little bit of something through into here as well. And if you see it in the finished painting, then it's a bonus, isn't it? Try not to make it look too symmetrical like I have there. I'll do something like that. There we go. So I just changed it so it didn't look too symmetrical. And this is going to come right down into the tops of those bushes there. So again, nothing too bright and sort of, you're going to stand out too much. And don't put too much colour on the pool. You're a great one for coming back and just adding a little bit more, aren't you? There we go. There. Okay. And the brush I'm going to use for the foliage, I could use a 1-inch brush again, but I think I'm going to use a nice oval brush. That's the one. It's got a nice sort of soft sort of shape to it. We'll see what we can do to do some nice foliage with it. So here's the brush I'm going to use, and it's a Bob Ross oval brush. And check out that shape. That's got the natural sort of umbrella shape that I talk about in the foliage in here. Now, if you struggle doing foliage, then I can sort of highly recommend this brush. It is just so much fun to use. And I'm going to take you through a little bit of cad yellow, a little touch of sap green, and yeah, I even put a little touch of phthalo green out on the side just to add a little more pop. But use that phthalo green, ooh, really sparingly. As you see, it really makes those green colours become almost fluorescent. If they get too fluorescent though, I can always bring in a little bit of yellow ochre, and that will dull that colour instantly. Look at that. See how that just takes down the brightness and the intensity a little bit, but we still have that lovely colour. Notice also that I load my brush only on one side. You can see the Bob Ross logo there, and I like to load the back of my brush, pulling the paint out and give it a little press. I'm going to try and create that little kind of mark in the paint, and when you push, the back of the brush wants to really splay open. Okay. That way we open the back of the brush up and we create this lovely sort of open lacy effect, the bright edge to it. Now, let's get up here. Think again where the light's coming from. The edges of this tree are going to be really brilliantly intense. But also don't forget, we're going to be putting a nice silver birch over the top of this. So this is really a filler tree. It doesn't really have the starring role quite. But let's see, let's have some fun with this. I'm just going to touch with this brush. Wow, look at that. Isn't that crazy? A few little touches. As you do that, remember, all those little passengers are jumping off and they're jumping onto my painting. So you can't keep going with this forever. You eventually run out of paint. And again, I'm thinking about painting each individual little branch rather than just kind of filling it all in. And if you do stop getting any little passengers off your brush, then tap into some fresh paint and touch again. Now, this has a habit of making a very nice round regular shape. It is a blessing and also a little tricky because it's possible that you end up just painting a tree that's just a series of curves. Think about this, so tip your brush up on edge sometimes and think about painting with the tip of the brush more than just using the whole flat of the brush. I've done myself a nice big bright patch there. Let's fix that in a minute, but you get the idea. My painting is, think of my painting as a bit like where I could do some crash testing. My painting is the place where you see me maybe do things that somebody else might do as well. Okay, so that's a little on the bright side. I just may leave it. Let's just leave it. But see what I did? I turned it into a new shape. Not a complete shape, but maybe half a shape. And this is what you've got to do when you're painting. Sometimes you've got to just take a moment, stand back from your work, and look at it and think, yeah, it doesn't quite work. Yes, it does work. I need to do something with it. If something really gets away from you, pick up your palette knife, take off the highlight that's kind of getting you into trouble. Get scraped back down to that dark colour. Gone back into my old brush with some of that lovely dark green colour that we started off with. And you see, just as quick as that, I can just literally block out that really brilliant colour here. And not only am I replacing that brilliant highlight there with a little bit of dark, but I'm retexturing the canvas at the same time. And that's the important thing really, is that once you've already put one bright layer of paint on there, the highlight colour, it's very sticky. And the problem is that trying to make another layer of paint stick to something which is already 2 layers deep is where you can run into some trouble. So let's be a little more careful here. I'm just pressing very gently. Okay, not too many really hard brush strokes. Maybe I'll just have that as a little kind of half branch in there, a little piece in there, maybe a little more, maybe a little touch more ochre, just to give me slightly more of a sort of subtle colour here, especially kind of round into the back of my painting. I think it might be a little less bright back in here. Also notice how much dark I'm leaving. Again, I think it's something of a little bit of a trap. We kind of see a tree and we think, so I've got to fill it all in completely. And my top tip is try and only fill in maybe a third of it, or even maybe a half. And you see, by doing that, you can't tell how many trees are in here. There could be 1 tree, 2 trees, or several trees. There could be lots of trees here further in the background. And it's only because I left a little bit of the dark colour in there. It's like a bit of a mystery. Your eye will try and work it out, but you just keep it a secret. So here you see how quickly I did the highlights on this tree. While I'm at it, let's do some bushes down here. I might switch brushes though and try it with a 1-inch brush. So here's the 1-inch brush I was using for the grass. Again, put it through the paint, put it out nice and flat, and then push back. Yeah, try and get that little line of paint going. If you can't get that little line of paint, then do what I'm doing now. Pull out more paint. Okay, there we go. Instantly I get that little line coming back. Just as before, we've got a nicely open brush and get that shape. Look how the back of it's been worn down by continuously loading my brush the same way. It's a bit like a hairstyle. You're training your brushes all the time. Not that I can talk about hairstyles, I haven't had one of those for many years. But notice how this time I'm going to just use more of the corner. Okay, so instead of using the rounded shape of the brush to do the work, I'm relying on a corner a little bit more. And as my brush runs out of colour, I'll do the little shadowy side of this bush. Darker, darker, darker. There. Now I'll add a couple more, maybe a nice bush here in the background too. I'll do this with a little bit of time lapse. Now, you saw in that last little section there, putting all these lovely little bushes in, but I did a bit of a stinker there, didn't I? I got myself a real pickle bush. And you saw, again, I fixed it. I just scraped off what I applied. I redarkened it the area, and then I put some new highlights over it. But here's the top tip. Don't leave that nasty colour sitting on your palette. I guarantee you'll forget and stick your brush in it and then put it on your painting a second time. So if you've got a colour that really doesn't work for you, get rid of it. In fact, any of your colours that are really getting a little bit kind of overly mixed and getting a bit too sort of kind of grubby, have a tidy up. Actually get rid of some paint. it's only going to be a booby trap, so take it off your palette, honestly folks. It's no use being on there. It's just going to be, well, a bit of a pain point for you sooner or later. Now, earlier on in the painting, when I was planning this all out, remember I put some little bit of grubby white on here just to sort of show you roughly where my path was, and that was over that sort of greenish colour. Well, I want to darken that down a little bit, and I've got my filbert brush back. I gave it a quick wash. I got into some Van Dyke brown, and again I just want to work it into the painting and just tuck it in under these bushes under here. If you get any of these little bits of grass that got in the way, then you just literally just rub that up underneath. And this is just giving me a lovely sticky dark colour, which I can put some highlights. So here's my lovely marble mix colour, dark sienna, a little ochre, some white, even a little red and blue colour I mixed in there. Is that going to be a good colour? I don't know. Problem is here, as you see, what I did there is I just overmixed my colours a little bit. See, and I got a kind of a yucky sort of colour. Hey, this happens, but I'm going to go with it. I've got some of that. I got a little bit of everything on my brush here, and again, think where the light's coming from. I think this is a fairly bright colour. And notice how I kind of really hold my brush very, very loosely in my hand and just drag it across the canvas. And you're letting that dark, sticky colour take what it wants from your brush. And I'll tell you a little story that years ago, I was doing a class and I was doing a painting of lovely woodland scenes, one of my favourite subjects, and I was just having fun. Playing and just teaching, and as I tend to do, not really kind of paying too much attention to what I'm teaching, but what I'm doing, but I'm kind of just trying to get the classroom kind of swinging along. And I looked away from my painting and I dipped into a colour that was a little shocking. It was the wrong colour, completely the wrong colour, and I just picked it up on my brush and I looked away for a second, and I came back and I put in something like a little splotch of red on my painting, and it was just purely by accident. It was just a few little touches of a colour that really didn't seem to work up close. But the classroom beamed. They were just so happy. They just said, my goodness, that was kind of brilliant what you did just then. I pat myself on the back. I just said, how on earth did you kind of pick that colour? And I just said, folks, it was just a happy accident. I happened to put a splot of bright red paint in the middle of my path. An accident. But when I stood back, boy, it was a winner. So you see, sometimes I might throw in a few little extra colours here that maybe don't quite fit with my painting. You've seen me do bushes over here, so let's do a little time lapse for that corner. At last, we're at the stage where I can put that little pop of light in the sky. And once that's in, I might go back and have a look at some of the highlighting here on some of these trees. You see, I deliberately toned this down. I didn't want this to be too bright until I get that done. Now, it's been a day or two since I painted this, so when I touch it, it's just touch dry. It's perfect for adding an extra pop of highlight here and there without mixing mud. Talking of mixing mud, let's look at my palette. Yes, that's really muddy, isn't it? This is all the work I've done over the last couple of days, and as you can tell, some of these paints have dried out too. Maybe I'll put out a little piece of fresh palette to see what I can do. So here's my reduced palette. I managed to salvage some white, some indigo, some cad yellow and some sap green with a little touch of phthalo green in it. And by the way, I've been asked about this a few times recently. This is called freezer paper. I've got the box here. There we are. It's Reynolds Kitchen freezer paper. It comes on a big roll, and just what this is plastic coated freezer paper. But it's identical to those really expensive disposable palettes you can buy in an art shop. It comes on a roll, and I just tape it down to a kid's plastic dinner placemat, and that's taped to the back of a very, very old palette from years back. So just something that's stiff enough for me to hold up in front of the screen so you can see what I'm doing. But white and a touch of this Indian yellow colour is what I'm going to use for my sky. For the little pop of light in my sky, the sunrise, I got some titanium white and some Indian yellow. I'm going to use a nice freshly cleaned and washed 1-inch Bob Ross landscape brush. I want something fairly soft and fluffy. Now, normally, if my canvas was still wet, then I wouldn't have to do this. I just use white and allow the colour of the canvas to tint my colour. Be careful, there's a little touch of green mixed in with that. I think I'll be okay. But what I'm doing here is I'm just putting a little bit of paint on the very, very corner of my 1-inch brush. Now, you do want a lovely soft fluffy brush for this. There's no two ways about it. Hard old bristly brushes just won't do. You want something fairly soft. And I'm going to have the light breaking just on the edge of my mountain there. So I'm going to come in very carefully so you can see this. I'm just going to make a few little dabs. There we go, just on that edge. Now, as the light breaks over the edge of the mountain, it's probably going to lose the mountain edge. There's going to be some rays of light coming through here. But I want that to be bright. A lovely bright colour. And then as I go away from there, this would normally be picking up the colour of the sky, but of course as this is already dry, it won't do that. So as it goes away, I'm going to dry clean my brush a little bit. Knock off that surplus paint, and I'm going to just tap out a little bit more. And I'm going to let the background sky come sort of grinning through a little bit. Now, take your time with this, don't rush it. And if it's too bright as it goes away, you can always tint your colours. So you might go into a little bit of the Indian yellow colour. So this is a little bit more of a fiddly job than it would normally have been. And of course, you will want maybe some rays of light. Just the suggestion of a little sun ray here and there. Okay, so not big laser beams, just a little bit. And we want some little rays of light coming down into here as well. And again, just do a few, stand back and have a little look. I suppose the one big advantage of doing the painting and it's a little bit dry is the fact that if I do something I don't like, I can always wipe it off and come back and do it again. So there's a silver lining, isn't there, to everything we do. Now, how many more rays of light do you want breaking over your mountain? Well, we've got to be a little careful here. We don't want dozens of them, but I think just maybe a couple, 3. I think maybe one little bit more. Maybe one going a little further. See how I'm just using the edge of my brush there. Look at that. What do you think? I think that's rather cool. It's a bit white in there for me. I think let's tone that down to the way it looks in real life when I'm filming, because the camera doesn't see what my eyes see. But I hope that gives you an idea of just how subtle you can be with it. And if you wanted to, you could even add a few little blobs of colour here onto some of these little bits of snowy mountain. If you've got something like a really soft fan brush, this is a Bob Ross floral brush, it's very, very soft, or this little synthetic brush, you can even get these little strokes and soften them up just a little tiny bit more. Top tip though, these have all got to come from a very central place in your sky. If you have odd ones that look like they're coming from that angle, they won't work. So it's all got to look like it's coming from one central spot. And I'm going to use that brush, add a little bit more cad yellow, little tiny drop of sap green, give it a little press, a little dab. Maybe just 1 or 2 of these, get a little pop more, a little touch. What do you think? Just catch the odd tip. just perfect. Look at that. Yeah, that looks like it's just catching the sunlight through there. And I want to add a few little bright spots to my grass as well. And I want this to look nice and soft. So I'm going to lay my brush on its side and give it a little press. A little touch of white. And you see I'm just touching the bristles to my palette. And instead of going in flat, I'm going to hold my brush up. And I'm going to just touch with the brush here. Now this is going to cast these bushes are kind of cast a shadow, so you won't see any much light until about maybe here. And I'm just going to press and get my arm out of the way. See just a little pop of soft light. Maybe some longer grasses. So I turn my brush. If flat is too big, then you can just go on a slight angle and touch. Maybe add a few little pops of light onto one or two bushes, maybe even a little bit of light onto my pathway. I'll do some time lapse through that bit. Wow, when I stand back, it looks like someone's put a torch across my painting and made this really glow, but I promise you, it's just the paint that's doing it. I think the last touch I'm going to put on here is maybe a little bit of extra highlighting on the side of my little silver birch. So I take some of that white with Indian yellow colour, and just here and there I'm going to just add a little pop of sunlight. Nothing special, just a few little touches. Again, my tree is dry, so I can actually touch this and actually do a little bit of fun stuff with it without all my paint coming off. There you go. So sometimes having a warm day and a painting that's drying too fast, well, we make the best of it, don't we? And I think with that, we have a finished painting. So there you have it, Wilderness Way, another Bob Ross classic for you to put on your to-do list. Now, don't move, lots more lovely videos for you to watch coming right along. Go on, click it. You want to click it, don't you? Go on, just click it. Go on, click it.